Con 2016, and this year was an interesting one because it had a lot of ups and downs for me. There were some good parts and there were some not so great parts, some positives and some negatives, but overall I had a really good time this year.
DragonCon has never failed anybody that can take me out. And with Logan Creed by my side, I don't think there's nobody big and bad enough that can do it. So, how about me and Logan Creed versus every one of you Tommy Gun losers? That's what I thought. Every one of you is scared.
First thing I did after getting my badge here on Thursday was go to DragonCon Wrestling, which is now on Thursday nights instead of Friday nights, which I was a little upset at the change because I got so used to Friday nights, but after thinking about it for a little while, it's actually nice that it's on Thursday nights because then you can save your Friday nights for something else. Wrestling was fun, but there was one match, I think we saw like 3 or 4 matches, and one match was just like 2 wrestlers just slapping each other, and that's not what I like about wrestling. I kept wanting them to jump off the ropes. The thing that was different about wrestling this year is they actually had a match, like a continuous match that would kind of happen between matches of Peter Griffin fighting the chicken. Family Guy, you know that's a very iconic matchup. So that was actually a pretty neat idea that they were incorporating the cosplay part of DragonCon into the wrestling tournament. Friday morning, I made the choice to start off my official DragonCon, my first official DragonCon day with probably the most depressing panel that I've been to ever, which was a panel about like remembering folks who have, like famous people who have died in 2016. So they were talking about Noel O'Neill, they were talking about David Bowie, they were talking about Alan Rickman, and it's a good idea because you want to celebrate these people and the art that they've given us, but at the same time it's like super depressing because you're talking about dead people for an hour. The one thing I got really frustrated about with that one was that they couldn't talk about Noel O'Neill without putting down other Lois Lanes, and I think that's really unfortunate because you don't need to do that. That's not something that you need to do when you talk about that. You can remember her and her contribution to the legacy of the character of Lois Lane, but you don't have to put down the other ones. And I've learned that lesson over the years. There are Lois Lanes that I don't like, but I always try to respect their part of the history of the character. So yeah, that was a little frustrating, but I at least like the idea of remembering these people.
So your pointy finger is going to just point to the corners. So first point to the corner I'm pointing to. Everybody find that, and it's kind of backwards and strange. And then point down to the bottom corner here. Find it. It's all backwards, but okay. Now we'll point over to the other corner there. Okay, that corner. And I'll point up to that corner, up to there.
Fight for it. Fight for it. You got it. You almost, come on, keep going. You almost got it. No.
It's weird and backwards, but that's okay.
I went to a puppetry and TV and film panel that was part of the puppetry track. It's always a really good track here, and they've bumped it up, you know, over the last couple of years. They've made it a really educational and informative and also really fun track and participatory a lot of the time. And this one was led by the lady who does Red on Fraggle Rock, and it was actually an opportunity for people to get up and try to be puppeteers. So they took people from the audience and they helped them learn how to use monitors and how everything is kind of the reverse and kind of weird, and they would use their hands at first, and then they put a box in their hands to help them kind of visualize what a puppet would look like and where the eyes would be and all that. And so it was neat to see a collection of older folks, some kids, some people who have done puppetry before, some who have never done puppetry before. And so it was neat to see that it can be taught, it can be learned, and I like the idea that they are passing on that knowledge to people who are just maybe coming to a convention and just kind of popped in, but it is something that I think is an art that needs to be passed on, because I think it's a really fun way to tell stories, and I like that the puppetry track does that here.
We were going to either go all black or all floral. I wanted a floral top, and then he was like, no, I only have a floral top, so then I had the floral pants.
Yeah,
it was tough. It was like hours this morning.
That's what directors talk about mostly.
I went to a directing panel with Brian Henson, who is the son of Jon Henson, and I felt really bad for him because I think he got frustrated because the AV stuff wasn't working very well. The monitors were too dark, and so it was hard for some people to see the clips he was wanting people to see, and you could tell he was getting a little flustered with it.
Project that I did with my dad during the summer break in high school, and oh, those lights being off. Oh, all right. Now I'm scared.
You can't see them. Now you can't see them out laughing at us.
I didn't learn too much that I didn't already know, but it was nice to hear him talk about the things he's worked on and sort of the way his progression as a director had gone from just kind of being a puppeteer into being a coordinator, a puppet coordinator, and how that transitioned him into being a director.
Well, we were all puppeteering as young kids. My dad would make us do stuff in the background and stuff like that. And I built this very first Muppet when I was like 14.
Wow.
And Frank Oz picked it up and made it really funny. And then that was the beginning of Muppet Penguins that we built. So I did some puppet building when I was younger. And yeah, then I guess, when did I really start puppeteering? I did Great Muppet Caper. My dad, I was always a marionnettist. that was the extent of my rebellion.
Strings are big, Dad.
Dad, string puppets are cooler. But I used to build and string puppeteer marionettes and really enjoyed it. And then when he did the bicycle sequence for Great Muppet Caper, in the first Muppet movie, it was just the bicycle riding in a straight line for a little bit. And he said, oh, I'm going to do this thing at Edison Park, and it's going to be Kermit and Piggy riding together, and it's going to be designing the platforms and cranes or trucks that we're driving, and we had to ride the puppets from above. And then he said, yeah, I want them to do a figure eight. And then opposite directions. So we're like, oh, how do we do that? And so that was a really cool project that I did with my dad during the summer break in high school.
And to also hear about some of the more unique projects he's done. He's done a lot of Muppet things, but he's also done some things for TNT that were very different, and how he had to think about the TNT production in particular, where he had to figure out a way to communicate a story without a lot of dialogue. And I think that is something that is important for a director, because filmmaking and TV and any kind of visual medium, you have to be able to tell a story with pictures. And I think that was something that Brian Henson communicated very well.
So why was the directing of Christmas Carol a particularly successful project in my mind? Was the original hook. Trying to figure out the original hook of how do you do Dickens and Muppets together in one piece. And we had scripts where Mrs. Piggy was the Ghost of Christmas Present, the Gonzo was the Ghost of Christmas Past, and we had scripts where we were more Muppetizing. And then Jerry said, you know what, I want to just... Jerry Jewell, who wrote it. And he was most of the Muppet head writer for most of the... Yeah, Jerry was like the first one. Jerry was in the company before Frank Oz. And so Jerry wrote it, and then he just want to write it. And then he came up with that kind of Gonzo v. Charles Dickens. And I was like, okay, that's absolutely genius.
The puppeteers for BB-8 from Star Wars The Force Awakens were here this year, and I didn't totally realize that BB-8 was a puppet. I thought he was, because when I saw him at Star Wars Celebration, when he came out on the stage with R2-D2, I thought he was like kind of a remote control thing, but he is a puppet. And it was cool to see that they had figured out a way to make BB-8 run as a puppet in the various ways that they had tried to operate it.
JJ came in, he saw all the different versions of the droid, and he said, I love it, I love the way you're doing it, go read the scripture in the movie. Yeah. And we read it, and we knew it was in the film, but we didn't realise it was in the film to that extent. And so we were like, very excited, and then suddenly went, we've got one here.
Yeah, and classic JJ as well, he knew we were obviously working on it, and Neil, classically, Neil's brilliant, he keeps everything secret, so he says to the director, we're working on this droid, and we'll show you when it's finished, and JJ's like, I want to see it, come on, you gotta show me something, I gotta see something, Neil, come on, we'll show you in like 3 weeks. And Neil's like, no, it's fine, just wait, we're on it, don't worry, it'll be fine. and then he did see it, and he and Kathleen were like, in fact, what a relief. They saw it and went, and Kathleen or JJ?
I think
one or other of them. The first words that came out when we drove the character into the office, where we showed the character for the first time to JJ and Kathleen, one of them, I wish I could remember who, said, what a relief.
It could have gone digital like that.
And they brought some kind of early test footage of how they tried to make it work. They didn't have BB-8 there, which I was a little disappointed about. Sometimes with the puppeteering track, or puppetry track, they will bring the puppets that they're talking about. If they're famous puppets, like Kermit the Frog was here one year, the Fraggle Rock characters were here one year, and so I was a little disappointed that BB-8 wasn't here, but I can understand that that's kind of a prized possession you don't want to travel too much with all the time. But I was very fascinated by the fact that BB-8 is actually a puppet.
I'm going to thrust in at Kristen, and she's just going to beat it to the side, and then she's going to counter at me and to the side. And that's all we're doing. That's a bell clanger.
The armory track here is pretty cool. I've only done one thing with the armory track, which was an archery docent session where they kind of explained the history of archery and showed different bows and things like that. But this year I saw that there was a sword techniques and film panel, and so my friend Beth and I went to that, and that was awesome. They showed clips of old Errol Flynn, Robin Hood movies, and even The Princess Bride, which is has some awesome sword fighting in that, and they would go over some of the sword techniques with actual weapons, and they would demonstrate them.
I'm going to start off with a 4 count of a Glasgow 8. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our first phrase, all right? And then let's go into a high-low pattern. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to cut to your outside.
Okay, so go higher.
and then you cut low, and then cut high again. So from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, high. This is why we practice. Low, high. Once again. 1, 2, 3, 4, high, low, high. All right. So from there, let's go into. We'll go into a pair of rolling ones. So from the top slowly, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, high, low, high. Then you're going to attack my head. Slash down, yep, rolling, and we'll do 4 of these. 2, 3, 4. All right, so from the top, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, high, low, high, attack the head, rolling 1, 2, 3, 4.
And now that I know some of this information, it's kind of fun to go back and look at some of those sword fights in movies, and I guess even in TV shows if they have them, and just see if they, you know, use some of those old Hollywood techniques that have been developed over the years. And I found those speakers, the people who led the panel, who were, you know, people who have worked in the industry, they knew what they were talking about. People from the crowd would name out some random foreign film that had awesome sword fighting, and they knew exactly what they were talking about and what sort of techniques were used in that fight. And I was very wowed by that. They were experts, and I like that we get the chance to have those, you know, just hours at Dragon Con where you can go and learn and see people sword fight. It's awesome. I was really excited to try it. There was something in the Dragon Con app where you could kind of set up your schedule that was called Firefly drinking songs, and I'd never done that before, and I always try to do some new things every year that I've never done at Dragon Con before, so I went, and it was very popular. I had to sit in the back, and it was led by a guy I've seen before. I don't know what his name is, but I've seen him in the Filk track where he's used to, you know, play the auto harp, and he sang some songs about Lord of the Rings, and I actually used him in a video I did a couple of years ago where he was singing about elves, and he apparently writes songs about Firefly. And people in the crowd that I was sitting around, you know, they had heard these songs before. I guess he does them every year, and a lot of people had already known the songs, so they were singing along, and they were kind of easy to catch on to, and so you could figure them out and start singing along if you had never heard them before. And I think that's a good idea, but I think having a really long room it sort of takes the fun out of it, I guess. If it was more like in a round or something, I think it would be a more intimate atmosphere. So if they could kind of do it like a theater in the round kind of thing, I think that would be a much more inviting situation. Because it was a drinking song hour, people did bring their alcohol, so that was kind of fun. I don't drink, but I thought that was kind of funny that people did bring their beverages of choice, and they sang along while he played and sang.
We're all kind of mourning the fact that Cat Graham might not be quite as much around this season, but what that does do is open up an opportunity for more female characters to come in. And I know, I think we talked about this earlier, the idea that because she's now in the CW and there are crossovers, we may get to see her interact with some of the other female heroes a little bit more than what we saw in the Flash crossover, which was quite limited, and it was really just her and Barry. So we might get to see her interact with some of the other women that we kind of already know and love from the other shows, which would be great.
I didn't get picked to be a panelist for the Supergirl panel this year. I don't know why. It's not like I'm not qualified for it. I haven't been doing a podcast about Supergirl for a year and a half, but I'm not bitter. It's fine. But I went to the Supergirl panel anyway just to hear what they had to say. I just sat back and listened, and it was a good opportunity for me to hear what other fans think of the show, because I'm kind of in a little bubble with Supergirl Radio and our listeners, and so it's nice to be around other fans and kind of hear different perspectives. The panel I did get chosen for was about the DC TV shows and the DC films, and I had volunteered to do that one because I thought it might be a good opportunity to talk about both, which I enjoy immensely. But the panel description ended up being which was not available when I first signed up for it, it was very negative. And I knew I was going to be on the defensive when I sat on the panel. So I knew going into it, it was probably going to be somewhat of a hostile environment, which is what I think the opposite of Dragon Con should be. You know, it should be a welcoming, inviting environment for everybody who loves anything. But it was fine. You know, I can go and talk about it and try to defend what I love and try to talk about what I love and be positive about it. And that's all you can do. And I don't know why it happened, but when I got there, there was no seat for me. So that was weird. But someone was nice enough to go get me a chair and allow me to sit on the panel. It was mostly a good discussion. I thought the other panelists were fairly knowledgeable and had some good things to say. But there was one question, and this question frustrates me. The idea that there were no jokes in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I can't comprehend it. I can't. I am a lover of comedy. I grew up with TV sitcoms. I still watch sitcoms. 30 Rock is one of my favorite shows of all time. Tina Fey is like one of my heroes. I listen to comedy podcasts. I feel like I know what's funny. And so when this gentleman in the front row was very negative about how Batman v Superman had no comedy, no jokes, I responded, and I tried to do it as delicately as I could to present the case that, you know, Perry and Martha Kent and Alfred were comedic relief characters who brought some levity to the movie, and that humor is subjective. Just because you don't think something's funny doesn't mean that it's not funny. You know, that's just a lesson you have to learn, that not every joke is going to land with you, but it might land with somebody else, and that there's different types of humor. There are, you know, in-your-face jokes, and there are some based on character. And it was sort of frustrating that that continues to be debated. I don't understand it.
Yes. I have a question that's a little bit different. So I agree. I really like the deeper themes that movie tended to explore. But one of the things I noticed compared to like the TV shows is that when you take the movie Batman v Superman, even with its extended cut, like there's no humor for any downtime.
There's no humor in any of the films.
Movie.
Yeah.
It is dark, depressing,
it's relentless
all the time. And
I will. When he's finished, I promise I'll repeat it.
And you have the TV shows, which even in Arrow, which is a lot darker, tends to have a little bit of humor. Like, how important do you think that is in like both critical and fan reception to these projects?
So he asked, he said that in the films, in the Snyder films particularly, that there's no humor. It is like non-stop, you know, action and drama. Whereas even on the darker show, even on Gotham, even on Arrow, that have the darker themes in the DC TV universe, that there are still moments of levity and there are comic relief characters. And I guess the last part is you wanted to know if that was a pro or con.
Yeah. How do you guys think that might have affected critical and fan?
How it affected critical and fan reception?
Well, I would disagree with you, because Batman v Superman had Alfred Pennyworth making jokes. He was very sarcastic and always called Bruce out on his garbage. And then Perry White, you know, what was that, water wet joke? I mean, he was doing that stuff all the time. And even Martha Kent had a little moment where Batman saves her, and she says, he says, you know, I'm a friend of your son's, and she says, oh, I figured, the cake. So my question to anyone who would, and take no offense, please, but my question would be, what do you find humorous? What to you is funny? Because I think that is very humorous and funny, and I think that's good comic relief because they do it at appropriate times. They're not making jokes while they fight. They're making jokes when it is meaningful and makes sense. So I consider that that Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice had a lot of humor in it. So that was kind of the part that was the worst for me during that panel. And when I finished and met up with my friends later who had been there the whole time watching the panel, they told me that there was a guy sitting behind them who said something to the effect, well, it only had one joke and they got up and left. So I considered that that Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice had a lot of humor in it.
That's about 3 times. There was only one joke in the whole film.
I guess I'll have to dissent on this one.
So basically, me saying that I thought Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice had humor made a guy get up and leave. that is a sad state of affairs. It is a sad, depressing, awful state of affairs. I laughed at it at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it upset me, because the guy didn't even want to listen. The guy didn't even want to listen to what I had to say. I never want to make someone get so mad that they get up and leave. But I was simply saying that there was humor in the movie. That's all I was trying to say. So I'm sorry to that guy who got up and left. I'm sorry. I meant no offense, but there are, I mean, it's just a fact. There were instances of levity in the movie. I don't know how you could say otherwise. The upside to my panel was that I got to run back into, I had seen Michael Bailey, my friends Michael Bailey and John Wilson, who are podcasting friends and real life friends of mine, and I got to hang out with them for a few minutes and chat with them, and met some Supergirl Radio listeners. One of our regular feedbackers who sends in feedback, Gregory, came and approached me, and we talked for a little bit, and it was nice to meet him and kind of talk to him. And there was another podcaster I had met recently. I found out about Matt Rushing because of a podcast that he does, and some of the episodes I listened to were about his Man of Steel comments and thoughts, and his Batman v Superman thoughts. And he's so well-spoken, very articulate. You can just tell by the way he talks, he has a lot of compassion, and he has a lot of empathy for characters, and he has a vast knowledge of Superman. And I really enjoyed what he had to say on those podcast episodes I listened to, so I started following him on Twitter and subscribed to his podcast. And we had tweeted back and forth a couple times, and he said he was going to be a panelist on some Star Wars panels. And I just, again, because of my schedule and things that were going on, I didn't get a chance to get out there and say hi to him. And I was surprised, and very pleasantly so, when he came up to the panel table after my panel was over and said, "Hi, I'm Matt, and I just wanted to come and meet you." And that was really nice. I met him and his wife, and they seem like good people, and I hope to see them again. And I guess I'll be kind of hearing what he has to say through his podcast. It's always neat to meet people that you talk to and communicate with on a regular basis, but don't get to hang out. So that's awesome. And another positive aspect about the panel I was on, even though it was kind of negative and harsh and I felt very isolated, there was a guy who also came up to me after the panel. His name was Gary, and I can remember that because that's my brother's name. And he was like, "Do you have a business card? Maybe I should start printing them." But he asked me for a business card, which I don't have, and he just wanted to stay in touch with me and communicate with me about the DC movies, because the more he talked about the movies, the more I realized he loves them just as much as I do. And so I followed him on Twitter, and he followed me on Twitter, and so it's nice to know that through these interactions, and I think this is why Dragon Con is so close and near and dear to my heart, is that you get to meet people who share the same interests and loves that you do. And sometimes when it does feel isolating and like you feel like you're the only person who loves a certain thing, you can come here and find somebody else who loves that thing. And so I'm very excited to be able to continue that conversation with Gary and hear more of his thoughts about why he loves those movies so much, and what he wants to see coming out of them, and what connects him to those characters. So that was kind of a neat thing that happened after the panel. And then I was kind of down on myself about that guy getting up and leaving. And about an hour later, I was totally out of the building. I had been in the Marriott for the panel, and my friends and I had walked out side to go somewhere else. We were just on our way to another thing, and this total stranger stopped me on the street, and turns out his name was Zach. I asked him for his name. He said his name was Zach, and he told me, you did really well on the panel. And I said, well, thank you. And he said, even though I disagreed with a lot of the things you said, I appreciated that you had some fresh things to say, that you didn't just say, you just didn't repeat everything everybody always says. And I just said, I really appreciate that. I needed to hear that. I have a lot of unpopular opinions, so I know that going into things that I might be one of the only people who feels a certain way. But I really, that was something I truly did need to hear, because it was nice to know that even if someone didn't think the same way, didn't feel the same way, didn't have the same opinions, that they would still listen. And, you know, he was the total opposite of the guy who got up and walked out. And that's always kind of my goal. If I can communicate the way I feel about something without putting someone down or offending someone or making somebody get up and leave, and they still want to stay there and listen to what I have to say, that's the goal. So thank you for that, Zach, wherever you are. I truly do appreciate that. I went to a couple of panels that my friend Michael Bailey did. I went to the Batman 66 panel.
To the Batmobile. Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed. Roger, move out.
The G.I. Joe panel he was on, I didn't have anything to do for an hour, and I just popped in there, and it was awesome. I know very little about G.I. Joe, but I thought the discussions they had were great, and I learned a lot about G.I. Joe and the fan reactions in the comics and everything, so that was very educational and informative. And I also went to the Superhero-Versary panel that they did again this year. I think this is the second time they've done it. I love it. I'm a nerd. I love learning about the history of comics and the history of these characters. And he explained something today about how Elvis Presley had a love for Captain Marvel Jr., which is so obscure to me. That's so obscure. And then connected it to Elvis's jumpsuits. And apparently Elvis Presley loved the Marvel family.
Who here listens to the Thrilling Adventure Hour?
Yeah!
Me too.
I am a fan of the Thrilling Adventure Hour podcast. I am not in California, so I can't go to, or I think they've done shows in New York too, but I've never been able to go to an actual performance of the Thrilling Adventure Hour, so I have to listen to it in the podcast. But I love Sparks, Nevada, I love Beyond Belief, and even Philip Fathom is kind of fun. And so I saw that there was a Thrilling Adventure panel here at DragonCon this year, and that it was going to be with Hal Lublin. And I recognize Hal Lublin from the podcast, and so I went and gave it a go. And it was tough for me to enjoy it because I was sitting kind of near the back, and so sometimes that was frustrating because it was hard to see and all that kind of stuff. But I liked learning about his history and his career, and it was neat because he had said he had gone to Adult Swim recently, I guess while he was in Atlanta for DragonCon, and he picked up some, you know, swag, a poster and some t-shirts, and he gave them away, and he was really awesome to the guests, to the people in the crowd, to the fans. So I appreciated that about him.
That part was originally written for Christopher Maloney for Sketchfest show, and that was the same year that they were doing the 15th anniversary of Wet Hot American Summer. So he was coming up to do, or the 10th anniversary was 2011. And he was coming up to do that show, and a bunch of us were in that show. But he missed his flight, I think because he was working, because he's a busy actor. And when we rehearsed the Thrilling Adventure show, I filled in, because that's what I do in rehearsals. If somebody's not there, generally I'll cover their part. And I said, who is this guy? And he said, he's Batman. And I said, is he Adam West Batman or Christian Bale Batman? And then I read the script. I was like, it's Christian Bale Batman. Can I do a Christian Bale Batman? Let's see if I can do a Christian Bale Batman. And then I went up to the mic, and this is what came out. And I showed him like this. And instantly, Hodgman, who was in the crowd, was like, he's doing that in the show, right?
The only other real celebrity panel I went to this year was a BSG panel, and Katie Sackhoff was here this year, so I definitely wanted to go see her. I thought about getting my picture made with her, but I never got time around to do it. But it was a good panel. A lot of it was heartfelt, a lot of it was funny, and I enjoy the BSG panel, so I try to go now every year, now that I've seen the show.
First up, what do you guys think, our panelists, what do you guys think is going to be the hardest part of this challenge? I'll start off with Kate.
Probably getting things to hang and fit where they need to be. I use a lot of safety pins and elastics and clothespins and frustrated tears to hold my stuff together.
Sunday night we did something we had never done before because it was the first year they've ever done this. It was an hour-long panel in the alternate history track called Extreme Makeover Steampunk Edition. So it was a kind of a game show. They had judges and they had 3 contestants. These 3 ladies were supposed to be steampunk designers, and they had the 3 people modeling clothes for them. They were going to be the models that they were going to design steampunk outfits for. And so the models were 2 women and a guy, and they had 30 minutes to take whatever materials and gadgets and things they could find on this table that they had in the room, and they could use whatever they wanted to, and they had 30 minutes, and they could design anything they wanted to on their model, and by the end of it, the judges and the audience would determine the winner. And it was incredible, because I had such a hard time. I did a huntress costume this year, and it was hard for me because I'm not a seamstress. I don't have a sewing machine. I kind of just put something together with a few parts that I had, and it turned out okay, but it wasn't like the greatest costume in the whole world. But I had fun doing it. I had a little boy dressed as Harry Potter call me Huntress on the escalator, and that like made my day. That was pretty awesome. But these people, the steampunk edition of Extreme Makeover, they were legit. I was just amazed by what their brains thought to do in that short amount of time. And the woman that I had been watching during that whole time, she ended up winning because she had great ideas and it looked really good. Like, it looked like that model she was using could walk out into Dragon Con and be steampunked ready and ready to go.
It was really close. There were some great elements. You know, I was noticing the button because it was such a detail. It was just one of those things you didn't expect it at all. And then there was this over here. Give us another turnaround for a second. Let everyone see. Yes, okay.
And you managed to hide the label.
She managed to hide the label. That was the important part. And the winner is... I didn't speak Korean, but that's not a problem because it's for Sarah. Our lead designer is
So I was super impressed by that, and I hope they do it again next year because I would go to it again. And speaking of costumes and cosplay, I have been telling my friend Christy Robinson for like a year that she would be a great Supergirl. She and her husband Daniel love to do cosplay. They always dress up when they come to Dragon Con, and they're great at it. They have made some great costumes. And I didn't really kind of know what they were going to do this year, that we hadn't really talked about it. So I was coming out of the Brian Henson directing panel that I had been in at the Hilton. And when I came out of the doors, I looked to my right, I saw that people were taking pictures, so I stopped to see what they were taking pictures of. And I looked and saw that there was a Supergirl there. And I got really excited because I was like, well, you know, just on first glance, just kind of looking over there, I was like, that looks pretty good. That costume looks really good. That's a good Supergirl. I should get my picture made with her. And then I looked at her face, and it was my friend Christy. And I pointed at her, and I was like, I told you you should be doing this, and you did it, and you didn't tell me. And then I looked over to my left, her right, and there was a Flash standing next to her. And I looked at his face, and it was my friend Daniel. And I had a mixture of a feeling of pride and happiness mixed with betrayal because they had not told me they were going to do that. But it was kind of a really awesome surprise. But Chrissy looked great. She looked just like Melissa Benoist on the TV show. And I even told her later that when I would walk behind her during the day, she even looked like Melissa Benoist's Supergirl from the back, the way the cape draped over and everything. It kind of tripped me out. It was crazy. And Daniel had a really unique take on the Flash because his Flash suit looked like Grant Gustin's Barry Allen's Flash, but he had done some kind of wizardry with lights on his legs and even underneath the Flash logo, the lightning bolt, where it would light up. And he had a battery pack on it so that he could turn it on at will, and it would light up so it looked like he was running with the lightning bolts kind of coming off of him like they do on the TV show. And I thought that was really smart, and people loved them. It was fun because I kind of like threw everything else I was going to do away that afternoon and just hung around with them because I thought it was cool to walk around with Supergirl and the Flash. And it was just fun to see people stop them for pictures and people like wowed by, you know, how great they looked, and seeing them take pictures with kids and other Flashes and other people in that universe. That was a cool experience. Even though I wasn't the one dressed up, I was their handler, and they went and met Carlos Valdez, and I was hoping to get my picture made with him, but it just schedules, time. He was very popular. His line was very long, so I just kind of maybe another year. But it was fun to just get to see them meet him while they were in costume. My friend Tana and I went to the Friday night costuming contest. We'd done that 2 years ago and saw a guy in a Segway robot costume roll backwards off the stage. So you never know what you're gonna encounter when you go to the costuming contest. The downside was we didn't have a lot of time this year, and it started like 20 minutes late, so we didn't get to see much of it, but we got to see some fairly good costumes in the novice category, so I can't imagine what the professional ones were, but even the novices were very good.
How long did it take you to make this? I started this after last year's Dragon Con. Yeah, is like this fiberglass? Epoxy coating on it. So it's good for your back. Awesome. That is incredible. That is the most insane 26
So it was good to go to, even if I didn't see anybody roll off the stage this year. Although, I did go to another costuming contest. It was a Star Wars costume contest. There was someone dressed up as an Ewok, and the Ewok was too close to the back of the stage and fell backwards off the stage. So I've now seen 2 people in cosplay fall off stages at Dragon Con. So lesson to be learned: if you're in costume on a stage, stay more towards the front of the stage. Don't kind of go near the curtain, because that's where the drop-off is. And I was just mad at myself all weekend that I wasn't shooting any video when that Ewok fell off the stage. ABR, always be recording when you go to a costume contest that has a stage. Someone will inevitably fall off it.
Alack, what dreadful turmoil has beset the strong republic and its bonds of peace, or distant trade routes all do sigh and fret, as fears of grim taxation do increase. The greedy, vile trade federation hath created a blockade none may pass through. With deadly battleships they block the path unto the little planet called Naboo. Whilst politicians endlessly debate, the Chancellor Supreme piles strategy. He sends 2 Jedi to negotiate, they who keep peace within the galaxy. In time so long ago begins our play, in troubled galaxy, far, far away.
One of the things I put on my schedule every year for Dragon Con is the Star Wars Shakespeare reading, and in the past I've never been able to get to it because of my schedule. I had other things conflicting with it, but this year they were doing the Phantom Menace in the form of Shakespeare, so I made a point to go this year because I thought, of all the Star Wars movies, that would be an interesting choice to do the Phantom Menace. It was kind of long, but it was really cute because there's a little boy there playing Anakin. And say what you will about the Phantom Menace, it was cute to hear a little boy perform Anakin's lines in the form of Old English.
A celestial body scent? Did you make home beyond the galaxy? Whence did you come to bless my little life?
What didst thou say?
This year was kind of hit or miss a little bit. You know, there were some things that were great, some things that were disappointing, some things that were upsetting. But like all years at Dragon Con, I ended up walking away from it having had a good time, having seen a lot of great costumes, having met a lot of awesome people.
Animaniacs! Woo-hoo! Yeah!
Having had fun with my friends.
How fun was that? I can't tell. Just ice cream. No!
And having just a good time trying to enjoy the things that I enjoy and trying to learn some things. And I love Dragon Con. It's my favorite convention. I've been to a couple of other ones, but I think this one is just, it's so focused on fans, and I think that's what's great about it. The worst part of Dragon Con is that it ends quickly. I can't even believe that it's already Monday. So even though there were some down moments, I had a lot of great and positive and up moments. So even though another year has come to a conclusion and a close, I had a good time at Dragon Con 2016.
Yes, hello.